Okay, good morning. We're on Siman Reish Nun Gimel. All right, we're starting the fun of Bishul on Shabbos. Okay. All right. This can be quite complex. We'll try. The truth is, in my humble opinion, it's not so complex if you just stick with one opinion. The problem is there are so many opinions, and it comes up every single week, and everyone has a thought on the matter. So that's when it becomes complicated. Okay, Reish Nun Gimel. All right, this is primarily we're starting with Erev Shabbos, and things are going to stay on Shabbos. That's the okay. Aleph. Kira shehi asuya kedera v'shoftin al pia kedera lamala v'yesh ba makom shvitat shtei kederot. So a kira is the famous oven or stove in Shabbos. And Masachet Shabbos, and this is basically, Lamaisa the poskim say, our ovens and stoves are both this category of a kira. Okay. And now this item has, just, Shulchan Aruch writes, the kira in the times of the Gemara, it was like one big oven that had two openings on top, so you can put two pots on at the same time. Okay, so, im huska begevet shipsot shel zeitim u'be'etzim. If the fuel, one big stove. Well, it's also a stove and an oven. It's both. If you put it inside, so you can use it as both. Well put. Okay. So if it's fueled with the leftovers of or crushed olives or pieces of wood, that's then asur litin aleh tafsho miba'od yom lahashoto aleha. So then you're not allowed on Erev Shabbos to put food right on top of it. Eli imkein yitbashel kol tzarko v'im mitztamek perush holech chaser viralo. If it cooks too much, and it will get worse if you leave it on, then you don't even have to have garuf and katum. That refers to basically removing and covering. Well, we're going to get to that soon. That's basically removing or covering the fuel, the ashes. So that's so then it's okay. Or common terminology, you don't have to use a blech to cover up the oven. That's if it's fully cooked, and if it stays on longer, it's going to get worse. It's going to overcook, dry out, v'chulei. Or if it was completely raw right before Shabbos. Now, this is $1 million question. What does that mean, completely raw right before Shabbos? Because as soon as you put it on, a few minutes later, it's no longer completely raw anymore. So, there's no exact clear definition. Some say you have to put on raw food, a chunk of meat, right before Shkia. Some say right at Hadlachas Neros, candlelighting. The point is that if you put raw meat right before Shabbos, this is not on a grill. This is in a pot of liquid, like a cholent, like in a crock pot, a pot that's full of liquid. So then the assumption is it will take at least 2, 3, 4 hours minimum, probably 3 to 4, for it to cook. So in that situation, you're not expecting to eat this for Friday night. If it's not meant for Friday night dinner, so then we don't have the worry that someone's going to come stoke the coals or turn up the flame, turn up the gas, and no one's going to, because even if it's on a low flame, if you leave it overnight, it's going to be fully cooked by the morning. So again, let's keep reading. The kevan shehu chai meisiach daito mimenu, since it's raw, you're not going to think about it ad lamachar until tomorrow morning. All night long, it's going to have time to cook, and we're not worried that you're going to come to stoke the coals or turn up the flame because it's not cooking fast enough. If it's an item that can get cooked in an hour, then we're afraid. It looks like it's not getting ready on time for some strange reason, so you want to stoke the coals, which would be in Isser Daraisa. So if it's partially cooked, but it's not fully cooked, and even if it is fully cooked, we have fellow. But if it keeps on cooking, it'll get better. Right? Often the meat gets softer and more tender or more flavor. So then, so then you're not allowed to leave it on Friday afternoon, to be there on Friday night. you remove the coals, you cover them. You took some dry dirt or afer and you just covered them up, and they're not revealed, so it's not as hot, and you're not likely to play with it. Right, nowadays that means using a blech. Some point out you should cover up the knobs as well. Okay, v'im natan ba chaticha chaya mutar ki'ilu hayta kula chaya da'ayidei kach masiach da'ayto mimena. Or the other option is, if you don't have a blech handy, you just throw in a raw piece of meat, like we just said. And since you don't even if all of it's cooked, but you just add one piece of meat, that kind of ruins it. You're not going to eat from it, since there's a raw piece of meat in there. And we're assuming it'll take a few hours to cook, and so therefore it's not a problem of you might come to heat it up. So in that case, it doesn't have to be garuf v'katum. It doesn't have to have a blech. Even if it's not garuf v'katum, mutar lismach la kedera b'samuch mutar. One second. Afilu eina grufa ktuma. New topic. Even if it's not garuf v'katum, then you're mutar lismach la kedera b'samuch chutzala. You're allowed to put your hot cooked food on Friday afternoon without a blech if it's right next to the flame. If it's not directly on the flame, but it's going to keep it hot, it's next to the flame, it's going to keep it hot, that's okay, without a blech.
Just clarifying, if there's raw meat, then you still can't put it on, it can only be next to it?
No. That's why it's new. It's a new topic. There's a period. If it's raw, you can put it right onto the flame Friday afternoon. Okay. Right before Shabbos. Or perhaps right before Shkia, right before Lakas Neros. Right? But it has a little bit of seichel, has to be where it's not going to be ready in time for dinner. And so you see, you're not going to worry about it till the next day. Okay, if you put a little, half a gram of meat in the soup, it'll cook faster, obviously. So it depends. It has to be a situation where it's not going to be ready for that night, for dinner time. And if the fuel, again, this doesn't apply for our modern day appliances, but if it has just some straw in there, so straw, it's like paper, it just burns up, and there's nothing there to stoke the coals. If anything, it'll make it worse. So if it's the fuels of something where there's no worry that you're going to increase and play with it, then there wouldn't be a problem, and you don't have to cover it up or remove it. Okay, Haga. You have two kirot, right, next to each other. V'dofen shel cheres b'neim, hacha grufa ktuma, v'ashniya ena grufa ktuma. So one kira was prepared, one has a blach, one doesn't. So then mutar lashot al grufa ktuma. So obviously you're allowed to put it on the one that has the blach, alfa fisha mosif hevel mishena grufa ktuma, even though it's right next to the one that doesn't have. Doesn't have a blach. Right? Similar to what we just said in the Shulchan Aruch. V'tanur, here, so most hold, I'll just point out, most poskim hold that a modern day, I kept saying the word blech, most hold that blech is exact, but it doesn't matter, Ashkenazim, Sfardim, it definitely does have the same halacha as garuf v'katum. When I saw the Chazon Ish, says it's not enough. He holds a blech isn't enough, it's because everyone else holds as a heker, but he holds it has to be, garuf and katum is in the actual flames. So here, you are not really affecting the flame or the electric elements. It's just covering it. So that's his distinction.
So how would you say it's permitted?
How would he permit it? It's a good question. I don't know. But, okay. I don't think the minhag, unless you're a Chazon Ish follower, I don't think the minhag follows anyway. What? Yeah, I don't know how you can use a fire at all for him. That's a good, I don't know. Yeah, but if you want to use a stove, how do you make a stove able to be used by the Chazon Ish? I don't know if there is a way. I don't know. What? Okay, hot plate's a separate category. Here, now that someone in the room mentioned a hot plate, I'll just point out that a hot plate, according to many poskim, they consider it like the same status as a blech, because it's not derech bishul, and it doesn't look like you're cooking on it. But I believe Rav Shlomo Zalman and Rav Elyashiv were both strict on the matter, and they felt that since a hot plate gets really hot, and technically you really could cook on a hot plate, they hold it's not the same level, and you would need to actually put another dish or blech or something on top of a hot plate. So, two different opinions out there, just to clarify. Okay, yeah, we'll save crock pots, I think, for Hatmana, but okay. All right, let's continue. The Shulchan Aruch v'tanur. Afilu im husak b'kasha gava asher afilu yismach halo. So a tanur, that's an oven in the times of Chazal. They had different types of ovens. What we call a tanur is not the same tanur of Chazal. Tanur of Chazal is a specific type of oven, and the poskim say our appliances don't follow the halacha of a tanur. But just so you know what a tanur is, basically it's wide on the bottom, and it's like cone-shaped, and it's a small opening up on the top, and it's much hotter. It gets hotter and keeps the heat in stronger, and therefore Chazal were more machmer by a tanur. So even there, if it was heated up with straw, they didn't allow it. Afilu imhu garuv v'katum. You couldn't, even if it was garuv v'katum, one was not allowed to use it, to keep their food on Erev Shabbos. Kol zman shayad suledet bo. Now he says, obviously we're talking about yad suledet bo. Okay, another whole discussion could be yad suledet bo, just to suffice to say, different opinions, and in Hilchos Shabbos, when we're talking about yad suledet bo, we're usually talking about an issa d'oraisa. Obviously it depends on what the subject matter is. I saw quoted basically the range of yad suledet bo could be anywhere from 43 degrees to 71 degrees Celsius, depends on, or 110 to 160 Fahrenheit. Now that's a machlokas. Different opinions on what that is. There's no way, as far as I understand, for one person to come up with an exact number, because it's variables, and it's not an exact science. But wherever different poskim are going to have their window, their frame of where it's a suffix. So if your suffix is from 43 to 71, so anywhere in between, it depends. If it's a din d'oraisa, din d'rabbanan, that might make a difference if one has to be machmer for. And it really depends if you're cooking it or you're going to return things to the fire, if you're worried about bishul achar bishul, reheating foods. So it kind of depends on what the issue is. But some people's suffix zone might be closer to 50 to 60 or 50 to 66. So again, different opinions. But okay. All right, let's continue. We're on tanur. So we read tanur. V'kol shekain she'asur lashor betocho o al gabo. So not only next to it, but certainly inside or on top of it. V'kofach shehu makom shvitat k'dera achat. So this is an oven stove where there's only one opening on top. So it's a middle category. Again, it's not our ovens, our stoves. Im husak b'kash gava dinu kekira. If it was fueled with like straw, so then one is more mekel, begevet of eitzim dino ketanur. So then the halacha follows like a tanur, which is more strict. Tanurim shelanu dinam kekira. And all of our ovens and stoves are like a kira for halachic purposes. V'im shachach v'shaha. Now what happens if a person forgot and you left it on? Im mutav shel shebishal kol tzarko. If you left it on and you cooked and it was fully cooked before Erev Shabbos, so then mutar afiluhu mitzamek v'yafelo. And now on Friday night it only cooked more and got better, so then you're allowed to use it. But what happens if you left it on Erev Shabbos without a blech and it was not fully cooked? So then asur ad motzei Shabbos. You have to wait until motzei Shabbos to eat it. Mavar v'shaha asur b'shneim. And if you left it on purpose when you saw it, and then you left it on when you saw it, and Friday night, and you didn't take it off, then in both cases it's asur, whether it was fully cooked or not. Haga. Ad bichdei sheyasur. And the Rama adds, not right after Shabbos you can use it, you have to wait, let's say it took another hour to cook, you have to wait an hour after Shabbos. V'im lo hechziram, eino Yehudi b'Shabbat, dino kishachach v'shaha. What? Oh, Hechziram. And if a non-Jew, okay, whatever I said, if the non-Jew put it there, thank you, returned it, on Shabbos itself, so then it's as if you forgot, and you left it there. And if a Jew put it there, then it's as if you did it on purpose. Well, you did. And if it's getting worse on Friday night, because it was already fully cooked, and you don't want to overcook it, so then for sure you're allowed to get benefit afterwards, because you're getting no benefit. Okay, so then b'diavad you're allowed to eat from it. V'yesh omrim. Some say, shekol shnidbashu k'machal ben drasai, perush shem adam, shaya ochel machal shon nidbashal kol tzarko. So then, famous food of ben drasai, he was on the run, and so he had to eat his food really quick before getting caught, so he just cooked it just enough that it was considered edible. Not very much. Machlok Rishonim if it's considered 1/3 or 1/2. But the point is, it became edible, just not by most people. So then, if it was cooked this amount, Oshin Basha Kol Tzarko Mi Mistamek V'Yafelo, Mutar Lashot Agabe Kira. Or it was fully cooked before Shabbos, but it got left on, and it is actually getting better and better. So then some say you are allowed to, if it's a kira we're talking about, it's okay just to leave it on Friday night, no problem. Haga, afilu haga be tanur. Even if it would be on a tanur, this opinion says it's okay. Afilu husak begevet ve'etzim, afilu ena grufa ktuma. Even if there was no blech, v'lo huskara grufa ktuma v'husak v'kash gava ela shehitchil hitbashal. When the Gemara is machmer for these cases, that's only if it was not machal ben drasai. And so too for the halachas of chazara, if it was machal ben drasai, so then there are some where mekel. V'im shachach v'shaha tavshel v'shihit chil hitbashal v'lo higia lemachal ben drasai asur. And if you left it there and it wasn't even cooked that amount, maybe it got cooked. Just started to cook, but it really wasn't edible yet, even according to Machal ben Drasai. So then it's for sure we mentioned it's going to be asur. Ve'ein sarich lomar im avar v'shaha, and certainly if you did it on purpose. Hagav v'nagu lahakel kisvara ha'achrona. And the second opinion we could be makel for. V'kol zeh binyan shia, and this is talking about when you put it on Erev Shabbos. Shekeder yoshevet al kisei shel barzel o agabe avanim ve'enam nogat bagechalim. So here the case is, it's like it's on a stovetop, it's on a grate. It's not resting, embedded in the coals itself. Aval hatamana al gabe gechalim l'divrei hakol aser. But if you're going to end up doing hatamana when it's surrounded and embedded in the coals, so that's another issue of hatamana. And that everyone holds is going to be asr, because even hatmana on Erev Shabbos with mosif hevel, with an item that's mosif hevel, that's asr. Okay, to do that Erev Shabbos, and it's asr to benefit from it. Haga. V'yesh omrim nafil mekder omer al gabei eish mamish. And some say this is only if it's on the flame itself. Kol zman shehi lug megula lamala lo mikre hatmana v'shari. So the Ramah points out, this is a machloket between Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah, generally Sfardim and Ashkenazim, that if you have hatamana, if it's embedded in coals, or it has some coals just from the bottom, but it's not surrounded with coals on all sides, I guess 6 sides, whatever. If it's not embedded on all 6 sides, so then the Ramah says that's not hatamana. Even if it's with ashes, by definition, you have to have hatmana. The only time hatmana is if it's completely covered on all sides. The Shulchan Aruch writes that when it comes to being mosif hevel with coals, there is hatmana, even if it's not on all sides. Even if it's only on one side, just from the bottom. Okay, and that's okay. So that is a major distinction. V'chena minag, and the Ramah says that's the minag by Ashkenaz to be mekel, that's not called hatamana of mosif hevel. Okay, rak shenizharim lenatkan k'tzat kodem Shabbat min ha'esh kedei sheyuchal Yisrael lahasiru misham. It's good, but it should be separated from the fire before Shabbos, so that when you remove it, you don't have to move a lot of coals. But just a little bit, it's not such a big deal. If it's embedded in coals and you're going to have to move a lot of coals around, so then you should have a non-Jew do it for you. But if you have no choice, you're the only one who's there to take it off, you still could do it. Just be careful not to shake or move the coals, so that you don't reignite them. But if it's just a little bit, and that's not your intention to stoke the coals, then don't worry about it. Okay, bet. Kira shehigrufa ktuma. V'natal, so now we're talking about chazara on Friday night. We're done with Erev Shabbos, now comes Friday night, your food's on the stove. Kira shehigrufa ktuma. V'natal akadera me'alea afila b'shabbat mutar lachzira kol zaman shehi rotachat. So the Shulchan Aruch writes, is once you take it off, if you take it off, you're allowed to put it back on the stove, as long as the food is still boiling hot, or at least yad soleted bo. Okay, haga ve'oda biyado, and the Rama adds, and you have to be holding it. V'lo hinicha gabi akarka, Shulchan Aruch says, and it can't be on the floor. You can't put it on the ground. You have to be holding onto it. Haga v'daitu lachzira, and it has to be that you have a mind to return it when you took it off on Friday night. You have a mind to put it back on. V'dafka agaba aval letocha asur, but you can't, and it has to be on top of it. You can't put it inside of it. Uvetanu asur lachzira afilu garaf v'katum v'adin lekupach o hisiko begavet uve'etzim. And for a tanur, it doesn't matter. It's always going to be asur. Right, for the stoves, for the stove tops, the Maisa, we just say make sure you have a blech. Lechatchila, one has to have in mind to put it back on. It still has to be yatzoledbo. You put it on with a blech, you're still holding on to it. And most important, it has to be fully cooked. Never return the pot unless it's fully cooked, because then you have a real problem of bishul on Shabbos deraisa. Haga v'davka shehatavshil as mevushal kol tzarko. Right, that's what we just said. It has to be fully cooked. V'az mutar lehachziro afilu lekira acheret. And the Rama says, you don't have to necessarily put it back on the same stove, you can put it back on any stove, as long as, right, it has to be covered. Aval im lo nitbashal kol tzarko asur afilu takira. If it's not completely cooked, again, I said it again, then for sure you cannot put it back on. V'yesh omrim. The calls the eno asura kishanat lo minakira mi ba'od yom v'lo yachziro at shechashecha. So the Rama brings down a kula here. He says all these tanaim, all these conditions are only if you removed it Erev Shabbos. You put it on Erev Shabbos and you took it off Erev Shabbos, and now you want to put it back on Friday night after Shabbos, right, during Shabbos. Aval im lekacho misham mishachashecha afilu hinicho agabi karka mutar. But if you took it off on Friday night, you're allowed to put it down on the floor. Okay, he's making on this one. V'chein nohagin lahakil b'tanurim shelanu, and that is the minhag. Sheyesh lahem din kira v'somchin atzma al divrei mekilim. Okay, and you're allowed to be mekel. V'tov lahachmir, but he goes back and he says, actually, it's good to be machmer. Mil im nitztani l'kuli alma asa, and once it cools down completely, for sure it's asa. In other words, according to the Rama, you can return it, actually. Is he going to say it here? According to the Rama, you can return it, right, with a blech, assuming it didn't cool down. Even if it's no longer yad solededbo. That's another major distinction between the Shulchan Aruch and the Rama. So Maran Mechaber says it has to be where it's still has to at least still remain yad solededbo. Because once it drops below yad solededbo, that's main topic, one of the main topics in Shin Yechet. But once it goes below yad solededbo, according to the Shulchan Aruch, you have bishul achar bishul the davar lach, if it's a liquid, not if it's dry. And according to so that's what we're talking about. And according to the Rama, it's, you have up until it gets room temperature. And then you have bishul achar bishul b'davar lach. But if it's still warm, you don't have bishul achar bishul, not by yavesh, not by lach. That's for the Rama. V'yesh omrim, v'imotzi machal min tanur, if you removed it out of the tanur, asur la'anicha mekarim of kistot, you're not allowed to put it with these, I guess to have it, to cover it up. I think it's for hatmana. No, I'm not sure exactly. What did he say? Yeah, because that's hatmana. That's what Mishnah Berurah writes. Okay. Yesh omrim, the kol shehu samuch lechashecha. O samuch lebaruchu shu kabbalat shabbat ledidan. Imhu samuch kolkach shim nistani nekadera. Yefshar l'articha mi ba'od yom. Dino kemo b'shabbat atzmo. V'yesh mekilin v'aminad lahaka. So what about Erev Shabbos? Can you put things on right before Shabbos if it's cold? So it's a machloket, and he says the minhag is to be mekel. Tov lahachmer makom she'ein tzarech kol kach. But the minhag is, but one should be machmer if there's no need. Okay.
This is talking about soup as well.
This is talking about soup. It would be talking about anything. Mm-hmm. 1 second. V'davka al gabe kira mamish. This is only if you put it right onto the stovetop. About lismoch, but right next to the flame. Afilu samach le'esh v'makom she'at zeledet bo. Even if it is yat zeledet bo next to the flame, shari. That's not a problem. Afilu samach le'chashecha. Even if it's right before Shabbos. What is he referring to? I think he's referring to if there's no blech. I think that's what he's talking about. Right before Shabbos to heat it up right on the flame if it's cold. I believe that's what he's talking about. When one should be machmer. Not to heat something up that's cold right before Shabbos if there's no blech. And then you're just going to leave it on. Ubetanur ein chiluk bein la'achzir alav o lismoch etzlo. And with an oven, there's no difference. You can't use it at all. The only time all these issues are relevant and when there's yad soledet bo. If it's not yad soledet bo, you're allowed to. So I don't think they exist anymore, but I know my grandparents, they used to have a gas oven. So there was always a pilot in the oven. So in their oven, it was always warm, and it made the food very warm, but it never made it yad soledet bo. So they were able to, on Shabbos itself, open up the oven that was completely off and put in food to warm because there was a pilot that kept it warm, but never to the level of Yad Soledet Bo. So that's an example of this Ramah over here. Okay, all the issues are only when it's Yad Soledet Bo. I think we're going to stop. Yeah, okay. Interesting stuff coming up.